All right. Hello, everybody. Okay, cool. This thing's on. Well, good afternoon. I hope you've all had a good time these last couple of days. And yeah, it is time to find out exactly what's coming up in the next version of Mahara, 15.04.0. Well, 1504 is the series. Anyways, yeah. A little about myself. This is me. I am Aaron Wells, and I'm on Twitter. Although outside of Mahara conferences, I usually tweet about zoology, trivia, and dinosaurs and bad puns. So I don't know if you want to follow me at this point, but in the future. I work for Catalyst IT, which is one of the sponsors of this conference. And we are actually sort of the relationship between Catalyst and Mahara is that we are essentially Mahara HQ. We host most of the project infrastructure and handle the day-to-day fixing of security bugs and the scheduling of releases and those sorts of things. So although it is an open source project that receives contributions from people all over the world, the Catalyst Mahara team is sort of the core of the project. I thought I might go on just a brief tour of Catalyst House. This is where all the magic happens, down in Wellington. Has anybody here been to Wellington, Wellington, New Zealand? It's okay, a lot of people have seen it. It's a nice city. It's got a bucket fountain. You can see the majestic center in the background there. We are up on level 7. Here's our wall of international clocks, showing a lot of the exciting places that we do business with around the world. Especially, it's important to know what time it is in Christchurch at any day of the evening. And Pukerua Bay, yeah.
Such a great time difference between Wellington and Pukerua.
Let me tell you, every time I go there, the jet lag just kills me. Here's our break room, which if you were here on Wednesday, you know, I think I've noticed that the Auckland office's break room is a little bit snazzier than ours. I might have a talk with Don about that after this. Here's a view of my desk over there by the window. And here's what my desk looks like up close. Pardon the mess.
Is that a pineapple or
That's a wooden egg covered in googly eyes sitting there. I've gradually accumulated a collection of strange objects that my wife gives me for my birthday, so that's her fault. So yeah, anyways, we're here to talk about 1504, which is the number of the next Mahara release. And you might be scratching your head a bit on that. I mean, it's not really the usual counting, right? We've gotten a bit strange. We were going up by 0.1 each time, and then we went from 1.9 to computer programmer math. The number after 1.9 is 1.10. And once we hit that point, we thought, you know, these numbers are getting a little bit big, a little confusing. Maybe we should switch paths. So the thing is that Mahara actually releases a new major version twice a year, every 6 months. And so it's a bit more honest to go with the system that we have now. Instead of just numbering them arbitrarily, the new system actually tells you what time the release was scheduled to come out at. So the 1504 release is so called because it comes out in April 2015. And looking forward, the ones after this will be 1510, 1604, 1610, and so on. And yeah, so the beauty of having a 6-month release cycle, which we've been doing actually since about 1.6, I believe, right? Christina was the first 6-monthly release. It just allows us to make sure that we keep on getting new features and new improvements out on a timely basis, instead of sort of dragging around waiting for enough stuff to accumulate to get a new release. So anyways, yes, what exactly is coming up in 1504 though? Well, here's a little rundown by the numbers. As you can see, it's kind of a big change actually. In terms of the number of lines of code added, it's the biggest one out of the last few. Number of commits, again, quite large. And up there on the top, I've got my sort of planetary solar system chart comparing how I feel it is in terms of how big a change it is compared to previous ones. It's not quite as big as 1.8, which was a pretty major leap in, you know, rebuilding the page builder and all that, but it's still a pretty sizable change. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up in 1504. It's not exactly a lot of new features per se. What we've mostly focused on this time is improving the Mahara experience. So we've sort of made a list back in October or September about, you know, what are the things that make Mahara a pain to use sometimes, and what can we do to turn those into things that instead make it a joy to use. And so that's really what we've focused on. But there is at least one new feature in Mahara 1504, which is the annotation block sponsored by the University of Canberra for the implementation of that. And it's sort of the first step in a structured assessment system. It allows you to have multiple blocks on a page that have their own separate comment threads and allow you to sort of indicate assessments of different aspects of a student's work. And so, yeah, this is just phase one of the annotation proposal that we're working on for the University of Canberra. We will expand it into sort of a more full-featured structured assessment system in 1510, but I'll get to that at the end of the talk. So yeah, other than that, it's not so much, oh yeah, another big change. So since you might be wondering why we have so many giant lines of code changed, a big part of that is sort of a behind-the-scenes thing that I find really exciting, which is BHAT. And BHAT, despite the name, is not actually a B hat per se. It's a behavior-driven development framework that we use for automated testing. And well, to go back to the keynote speech this morning, automated testing is a way to let a robot test your software for bugs for you. So our testing czar, here's what, so yeah, our testing czar, Janelle, who you may have met here at the conference, she has spent the last 6 months writing reams and reams of test scripts for Mahara, which look a lot like this. It's one of the nice things about BHAT. We write test scripts that are almost just normal English. And this describes a series of steps that the computer might take to check and see that Mahara is working properly. So every time that we commit a code change, a computer launches up a Mahara instance, it clicks on these things and fills in these things on the screen, and then it checks and makes sure that it sees what it should and it doesn't see any errors or anything like that. And the beauty of this is that Mahara HQ is actually a fairly small development team. We have 3 full-time developers on Mahara at Catalyst, and we do almost all of the changes to Mahara. So by automating the testing, we make it so that we can be a lot more ambitious about making big changes to Mahara in the future without having to worry quite as much that we're going to break something in some obscure part of the code that nobody has looked at recently. So yeah, special thanks to Janelle, although she's already left to the airport, but she's, yeah, next time you see her, say hi. And I need to get her an actual B hat one of these days. So yeah. Now, a list of the things that are improved. As I was going through this and making these slides, I realized it's just, I gotta try hard not to sound like a guy on an infomercial, because there's so many scenarios here where it's like, has this happened to you? Well, now worry no more. But 1504 is really like that. For instance, how many people here have copied a page in Mahara? Made a copy of a page? And would you describe that as a simple, easy process? Yeah, it's been a little bit of a labor. You have to, so you're looking at the page, you think, I want a copy of this. You have to go into Portfolio Pages, you have to click a button that says Copy a Page. That takes you to the Copy a Page or Collection screen. Then you can search for your page, find it, click Copy, and finally have it.
So we can find it.
Yes, and hopefully you can find it. And how do you know that you can copy it anyways when you're looking at it? There's not really a sign. So we've added a button for that. Nice and simple. Now, whenever you're looking at a page and the page owner has given you the permission to copy it, you'll see a little button in the corner that says Copy. And you click that, and you get your copy of it. It's just one click instead of 5 or 6.
There's half my tutorial down the Google right there.
Yeah. How many people have embedded an image into a text field in Mahara? I see a couple. It's sort of an advanced thing currently, right? You go into TinyMCE, you click the image button, and you have to put in the full URL to the image itself, which is a big long thing that ends in .php ? File equals. Yeah, and in order to get that URL, you have to navigate away to your content section, click on the image, copy and paste. Well, now, thanks to some work from Mike Kelly in the UK, you click the image button and you bring up this, which just lets you select your image directly out of your content area. So again, it's taken down from 6 clicks to just 1, and you can even upload your images right there. Nice and easy. Has anybody here customized their site's logo globally? Yeah, and I mean, you can do it for a single institution by uploading a file, but if you want to change it everywhere in the default, you have to customize your theme, which is, again, not exactly a user-friendly operation necessarily. So we've made that easy, too. Now you can just click the logo button for the no institution, and that changes it site-wide. I wouldn't recommend changing your logo to a giant picture of Gamera, because it kind of messes up the page layout, but you know, we like to give you the power to make your site ugly if you want to. Yeah, did people here know that Mahara images have their own comment feedback threads? that is perhaps a seldom used feature because it's kind of buried. In order to see the comments on an image itself, you have to, well, first you enable comments on the individual image in the contents area. Then you got to go to the artifact detail page, which explaining that to people is kind of a headache in itself. And then finally there's the feedback down at the bottom. So we've made that simple too. We've taken artifact comments and we've placed them directly onto the artifact itself when it's displayed in a page. And thanks to the New York Institute of Technology for sponsoring that development. And we've done this not just for image artifacts, but also for blog entries. You can now see the list of comments there and have a link to post a comment, and for notes as well, which also have their own comment threads. Basically, all of the artifact types that have comments, instead of hiding them away on that obscure artifact detail page, they're just front and center right there where people can find them and use them. And it's separate. You still have your separate page feedback, so it's not taking away that functionality. Yeah, so we revamped the inbox in Mahara 1.10. I'm sure you all noticed that. It's a lot nicer now, thanks to some work from Tobias Zeutsch over in Germany. And one thing that we did with this was interesting. We made it so that you can send messages to multiple recipients at the same time. But the thing about it was we didn't really make it easy to start sending that message, you know? Say you want to send a message to someone, you go to your inbox screen, and what you see is all of these existing ones. But if you were to actually say, I want to send one to Christina right now, what you have to do currently is search for Christina, find her profile page, bring that up, and click on Send Message. So we just added another simple button right there, Compose, and that brings up the Send a Message screen, and then you can fill in your multiple recipients and everything, nice and easy once again. This is another one in one picture, but yeah, the page builder for Mahara has been one of the most central features of Mahara, right, is the ability to make pages. That's mostly what you do, but it hasn't worked on touch screens until now. Now it does. So that page on the right, I in fact made entirely on my phone, just so you can go to the, and it works exactly the same as it does on a desktop. You just drag the block into the section of the page that you want using your finger, assuming that you've got a modern phone. And BB code. Has anybody here ever used BB code? Can I see a show of hands? I see a few, yeah. It's kind of an obscure feature, and it is actually present in Mahara 1.10 on the wall block. The wall block is a surprisingly old part of Mahara. It's a workhorse that's been there since I think 1.2 or something, and hasn't really received any code updates in all that time. So it has this system called BB code built into it, which is sort of a watered down version of HTML, but it makes it easier if you are a programmer, I suppose. So we finally got rid of that, and now the wall block uses TinyMCE just like everything else in Mahara. So posting wall comments is exactly the same as posting comments on the bottom of a page. Just makes things nice and simple again. Right, so sending feedback. This was another annoyance that we noticed. Say that you want to have a conversation with somebody on one of their pages. You post a comment, and they post a comment in reply. But you never know that they've posted that comment in reply. You don't get a notification back. You kind of have to go back and look at that page over and over again. Even if you were to put it on your watch list, you still don't get that notification. So it is rather like this one-sided conversation. So that works now. Now, if you comment on a page, we use the existing watch list feature and just add that page to your watch list. And when comments are made on pages that are on someone's watch list, they get a watch list notification. So it makes it now possible to hold a conversation through comments on somebody's page. And if you don't want to receive the notifications about the comments on that page, you just tick that image and say, remove it from my watch list. So yeah, it's nice because it adds the ability to hold a conversation, but we didn't have to add any additional controls to Mahara. It was all just existing things. I think a nice, elegant solution to that problem. Similarly, if we had a scenario from one of our clients, Switch, that's right, in Switzerland. They had a teacher who had all of their students making journal entries, or blogs as I call them, and they would share these to a group, and the teacher couldn't tell which students had updated their blogs. So they had this giant list of pages, each of them with a blog in it, but they had to click through like all 20 of them and just manually eyeball it to see whether anybody had made any updates. So, oh, that's not really formatted properly, is it? But now, blog entries trigger watch list notifications on the page, which is not so much a feature as a straight up bug fix. and also watch list notifications on a page update the page's last updated date. So you put this all together, and what you wind up with is that on your groups shared with this group block, the pages that'll be at the top are the ones where someone has updated the blog on their page. And so now, instead of clicking through 20 pages, you can just look at the one on the top. Nice and easy. So yeah, here's another one. How many people here have used the image gallery block in Mahara and have set it to the default setting of square thumbnails, which distorts the perspective of all of your images? That's, again, a bit of old code in Mahara, which, you know, it works, but everybody looks either too skinny or too fat. Well, we had a code contribution from a random fellow in Germany who identified himself as Ace Ma, which turns these into the, well, it makes them still fit together as squares, but it doesn't distort the ratio, the aspect ratio of the pictures. So now your images actually look correct. Now, It's Easy isn't really grammatically correct to describe what's going on here, but, you know, I was on a roll. And lastly, this is one of my favorite ones. So how many folks here use myportfolio.school.nz, just out of curiosity? Oh, okay, a couple. Well, My Portfolio is one of the largest and oldest Mahara sites out there, sponsored by the Ministry of Education. It's been around since, I think, Mahara 0.9 or so. It's got some 30,000 active users. And when you load up your dashboard page, it often takes several seconds, 5 to 7 seconds. And, you know, as I was looking at that, I realized it's the blocks on the page, specifically latest pages, is a very database-intensive block. It looks through your database at every single page in the site, of which there are millions, literally, in myportfolio.school.nz, analyzes the very fine-grained access controls on those to determine which ones you can see. And the funny thing is, if you take that out of the dashboard page, it loads in a flash. So I thought, what we ought to do is load that separately. So that's what we do now. Mahara 1504 has a feature that makes it so that it can load up just a placeholder for each of these blocks, and then it loads the block content separately. And as a result, your pages now load really fast. It comes up quickly. The things that are easy to see also load up instantly. And then, you know, a few seconds later, perhaps, latest pages shows up. But it greatly increases the responsiveness of the page and makes it a lot more of a pleasure to use. And this one is a little feature that was done by Amelia, one of the students on our Catalyst Open Source Academy. We have a stronger password check. So all of you who are using password 1, next time you try to change your password to that, it's not going to work, which thanks, Amelia. Yeah, I do password 1 sort of a lot myself in testing. But, you know, it's good to forces us to have better password habits. All right, so those are just some of the highlights of all the things that we've smoothed out in Mahara 1504. There are a lot more of them that are even smaller little things, but you put them all together, and I think it really helps to make Mahara more of a pleasure to use. We also have a number of API changes, which API is not actually the Administración Portuaria Integral, but that's the first picture that came up on Google Images. API is it's an acronym that means Application Programmer Interface, and it's essentially a way for computers to talk to each other. Mahara has a lot of APIs, which people can use to write plugins for it. In case you didn't know, Mahara is an extremely pluggable, extensible application. And so we've made some improvements to some of our APIs. One of them, perhaps the biggest, and this also actually counts as a new feature, but it's a back-end one that you probably won't directly notice, is our new web services plugin for Mahara in 1504. You may have heard, if you also follow Moodle, that the connection system between Moodle and Mahara, called MNet, has been on the roadmap to be phased out for about 5 years now. Well, this is the actual MNet replacement, is the new Mahara web services plugin. I think I've got a screenshot here of the administrative page for it. And so yeah, it allows Mahara to communicate with other systems, to define the permissions for that in the granular, privacy-preserving way that you would expect from Mahara. And it's off by default, but you can turn it on. And it doesn't do anything right now, but as an API, it lays the groundwork for some work that we're going to do in future releases to allow other systems to connect with Mahara in more exciting ways. And other developers can, right now, as soon as they get 1504, start using it to write applications that interact with Mahara.
So the Moodle end is not ready yet.
Well, Moodle, yeah, this is step one in the replacement of MNet. But yeah, save the questions for the end. Another thing is, right, blocks can be ordered now. I don't know if you've ever noticed, looked too closely at the order that the blocks are in on the page builder screen of Mahara and wondered why exactly are they in that order. The dirty secret is that currently in Mahara 1.10, we just take the name of the block and then we order them alphabetically. And so that's why journals are followed by journal entries. It happens that by chance it puts the related things next to each other, but it was actually completely arbitrary. So in 1504, we added a way for block developers to specify the weight of their block and where it will show up in that menu. So it's a nice change. And now the order of the blocks on the page builder is slightly different, and it makes a little bit more sense. We've also provided a way for plugins to register menu items, which is used by the web services module itself, actually. So if you're a plugin developer, you can look forward to using that in order to add new admin menu items, and I think also user-side menu items to Mahara. Oh, another block API change that we made. You may have noticed in, I think it was 1.9, we added the text block and image block up at the top of the block palette. So before, those were actually hard-coded in to the template. In 1504, that's an API. So if you're a block developer, you can specify, put this block into the shortcut category, and it'll show up there as well. All right, we've also made some progress, exciting progress, in a couple of related projects to Mahara. The Mahara assignment submission plugin for Moodle, which allows you to take Mahara pages and submit them to a Moodle assignment. It sort of languished for a while after Moodle 2.2 came out. It forked. There were two different versions of it by two universities, but thanks to, I think funding from, that was from Canberra as well, yeah. Thanks to some funding from Canberra, we managed to de-fork that, merge them together, and so we now finally have an updated version of the Mahara assignment submission plugin for Moodle, which merges and takes the best parts of the two forked versions of it. And so if you go to the Moodle plugin database and search for Mahara, you'll find the live, updated, best version of this plugin in there now. And also Mahara Droid, the Android app for Mahara that I think we've mentioned a few times. It's got an update to 2.0 now. So that's live in the Google Play Store. It adds a lot of exciting new functionality, allows you to activate the camera directly from the app. It's a lot more like a modern app. The old one was sort of stuck in the Android 1.6 era. And on a side note, if you notice that little flyer in your folder that asks for help in developing the, and getting user feedback for the Mahara Android app, that would go towards this. We've got a student from Victoria University who's doing a research project to help improve the Mahara Droid app. So look for more exciting improvements on that in the next couple of months as well. So that's mostly what's coming up in 1504. Now let's take a look even further into the future. Now that 1504 is already almost out the door, we're sort of planning what's going to come in 1510. And like I said, it's a lot of exciting stuff, partly because of all those BHAT tests that allow us to be more confident in making large changes. One of them is Smart Evidence Phase 2, again with some funding from the University of Canberra. And so this builds on that annotation block by allowing site admins can create a set of standards, and then they can, when a student is using an annotation block, they specify which standard this annotation block is measuring their competency in. And then eventually, I believe it might be Phase 2 or Phase 3, we take all of these together and we aggregate them into a sort of report which allows the admin and staff to look at the student's competency in all of these different standards. So yeah, we're finally taking some steps towards putting some structured assessment options into Mahara, which has sort of been on our roadmap for a long time. So look for that in Mahara 1510, which is coming out in October. We are also changing. This one is, more of a back-end, well, it's also a front-end change. We're changing the themes in Mahara to use Bootstrap, which is a CSS framework. You might recognize the name from the popular Bootstrap theme for Moodle. And the beauty of Bootstrap is that it sort of standardizes all of the HTML and CSS, and so it should make it easier for theme developers to make custom themes for Mahara going forward. And also, as a side effect, it looks really nice. Our front-end developers have been working on it. Here's what the Bootstrap prototype looks like so far. I think it's actually really nice. And it adds a lot of nice sort of Ajax-y Bootstrap widgets as well that look really good. And we are also really thinking about usability. That's one of my main things that I want to improve in Mahara, is to reduce that learning curve, make it easier for new users. And so we've been working with our UX team here at Catalyst to redesign sort of from the ground up some of the core parts of Mahara. One of these is how we manage pages and collections, which gets kind of unwieldy under the current system when you get to a certain number of them. So we've been, these are some wireframes of ideas that we're looking at towards doing for the pages and collections redesign. And importantly, we've been looking at it in both mobile and desktop right from the get-go, because mobile is another one of our top priorities for Mahara going forward. We want to make sure that it works well on a mobile platform. So yeah, those are some of the things that I'm really excited about for 15.10, and I think it's going to be a great release. So yeah, that is everything that's coming up. And if you would like to know more about Mahara, well, you're already in a pretty good place for that. But if you'd like to know even more and stay connected, you can go to mahara.org, the Mahara community website, and there's also information on our wiki. And we love to get bug reports from users at bugs.launchpad.net/Mahara. And of course, code contributions as well. If you like to code, those are always welcome too. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
So the Moodle is not ready yet.
That's right. Yeah, I told you to hold that one. Yeah. So we're still, Mnet is still sticking around for a release or two, but we've been in talks with Martin Dugiamas, and we're working on it. The web services module is the first step in replacing Mnet. And part of the plan is that we are going to make sure that there's an easy transition from Mnet to its replacement. So don't worry about using Mnet for the time being. Keep with it. And when we do replace it, there should at least be some instructions to tell you how to switch over, if it is not automatic, which it might even be that. Any other questions?
Of the features that you've seen, which one excites you most?
Notifications for generators.
Smarter use of collections.
Mm-hmm.
That looks like a really good improvement.
And mobile, because it's so frustrating using an iPad to do things, particularly if you're talking to students and they're sitting there with a mobile device and they can't really do very much.
Yeah, that was one of the things I took away most from last year's Mahara Hui, actually, was just hearing how much people are using it on mobile. And so we've been trying to keep that at the forefront of our thoughts on stuff that we can fix.
And for the features and collections, we will make those mockups available very soon so that you can play with them and see, does it work for you, does it not work for you? You can change them then as well and send them back.
Ah, yes.
And really engage in that area so that it's not just our idea that goes into it.
That's true, yeah.
And we already made a start with that on Wednesday during the pre-week.
I forgot to mention, yeah, that's a big part of the UX stuff that we're doing for pages and collections, is we're looking to interface with users and various organizations to get their input and find out how they're using these currently.